Welcome to Evision.
Great to be here.
So today we're diving into, well, it's a huge shift, really, happening in the auto world. We're talking about the rise of the Chinese EV giant, BYD.
Yeah, it's a topic that's generating a lot of buzz, and for good reason.
Exactly. And for our discussion, we've got some interesting stuff. We have analysis from CNBC, a major financial source, but also, and this is maybe the really fascinating part, a whole bunch of comments, perspectives from people reacting online.
Oh, that's a great mix. You get the big picture data, the expert view, and then you layer on top these like real world gut reactions and actual user experiences. It paints a fuller picture.
That's the plan. We want to unpack all this, pull out the key facts, the surprises, and really try to understand what BYD's, frankly, meteoric rise means for the whole global car market, including, obviously, for players like Tesla.
And hopefully help you make sense of it all without getting bogged down.
Right. So let's maybe start with just the sheer scale of BYD. The numbers are kind of mind-blowing when you look at them.
They really are. The sources point to sales hitting $107 billion in 2024. Just let that sink in.
And that wasn't just a flat number, that $107 billion. That's a 29% jump from the year before.
Huge growth.
And crucially, it put them over 9.5% higher than Tesla's total sales for 2024. But here's a detail I found really interesting.
Go on.
BYD sold roughly the same number of fully electric cars worldwide as Tesla did last year.
Wow, okay. Matching Tesla on pure EVs.
Yeah, but that was only about half of BYD's total vehicle sales volume, because they also sell a ton of hybrids.
Right. That dual strategy, pure EV and hybrids combined with their manufacturing muscle, it's really propelled them. The analysis we looked at, it says they're now bigger, sales-wise, than household names like Nissan, Honda, even Ford.
That's incredible. This isn't some niche player anymore. They're a global heavyweight.
And the stock market reflects that, right? Shares were up, over 40% early in 2025 after hitting record highs in 2024.
Exactly. And just look at their pure EV sales growth from maybe 100,000 cars back in 2018 to over 1.7 million just 6 years later. That's not growth. That's an explosion.
Which is why, the CNBC analysis uses that term, existential threat. It's what Western automakers are apparently calling BYD. It's not just about cheap cars coming from China anymore.
No, the narrative has shifted. It's about innovation now, serious competition.
And that innovation angle, that's a big part of the story. The sources talk about this concept BYD uses internally, the technology fish pond.
Yeah, I love that phrase. Tell us about that.
Well, imagine this massive pool of R&D. They have, 800,000 employees overall.
Right.
And a staggering 100,000 of those are engineers. Just think about that number. 100,000 engineers constantly developing, experimenting, tinkering, as the source puts it.
So the idea is when they need a new piece of tech, they don't necessarily start from scratch. They can just sort of fish it out of this pond. Already developed, maybe even mature.
Precisely. And you see the results. Things like their LFP batteries, the thin, efficient ones, a whole new EV platform. The big move to ditch internal combustion engines entirely.
Plus, finding ways to make EVs cheaper than gas cars, which is huge, and rolling out their own driver assistance system for the mass market.
It shows incredible breadth, and they apply it across this huge range of vehicles. The sources mention cars from like $10,000 all the way up to $230,000.
So they're not just playing in one sandbox, they're everywhere, covering all the bases, as they say.
Yeah, truly checking all the boxes. And a lot of this, as the analysis and the comments really stress, comes back to their batteries.
Right. They're consistently called out as making some of the best batteries in the world. Leaders, right up there with CATL.
And that battery prowess, that leads us directly to maybe the biggest headline grabber mentioned in the materials, that charging speed announcement from March 2025.
Yeah, this is the potentially disruptive one. BYD claims they have tech that can charge an EV almost as fast as filling up with gas.
The specific claim is pretty wild. An EV platform that can add up to 250 miles of range?
In just 5 minutes.
5 minutes. I mean, if that actually pans out in the real world, it changes the game.
Completely. The analysis puts it in context, right?
Yeah.
Tesla's Model Y, its peak, is 250 kilowatts, adds maybe 169 miles in 50 minutes.
And BYD is claiming almost 250 miles in a third of that time. It just, on paper, it blows everyone else away. We were talking 400 kilowatts, 600 kilowatt as being super fast before this.
Right. This is talking potentially 1,000 kilowatt territory. And that 5-minute number, that hits a really key point, doesn't it, for people worried about charging time versus pumping gas?
Oh, absolutely. That's a benchmark, potentially. If you can genuinely get that much range that quickly, it could convert a lot of EV skeptics worried about, range anxiety and waiting around.
Okay, but The sources, particularly CNBC, they also bring in researchers who are, let's say, a bit skeptical, or at least caution that it might not be quite that simple in practice.
Yeah, there's definitely a reality check needed. Achieving that speed consistently is, well, technically challenging.
So what are the hurdles? Why isn't it as simple as just, plugging in and getting 250 miles in 5 minutes?
Well, there are two big pieces, right? First, the charger itself has to deliver that much power. And second, the car's battery system has to be able to safely accept it. You need both.
And the infrastructure, especially here in the US, isn't quite there yet for that kind of power, according to the source. The fastest common DC chargers are, 350 kilowatt max.
Exactly. And only about 22% of U.S. public fast chargers even hit that 350 kilowatt level. We're talking about something potentially 3 times faster than that.
Okay, so infrastructure is one piece. What else?
Then there's the physics of charging itself, the charging curve. Batteries don't charge at peak speed the whole time.
Right, it slows down as it gets full.
Yeah, it starts slow, ramps up in the middle. That's where you hit the peak speed, usually between maybe 20% and 80% state of charge, and then it really has to slow down towards the end, after 80%, to protect the battery.
The source used that analogy like stuffing clothes into a washing machine. It gets harder near the end.
That's a good way to put it. Trying to cram energy into a nearly full battery creates heat, stresses the cells. It can cause degradation, shorten the battery life, or worse if you're not careful.
So you need really sophisticated cooling systems or different battery chemistry.
Both of which add cost. You need expensive cooling or more expensive battery materials that can handle that stress better.
And the source also mentioned it's not a simple linear thing, right? Like 1,000 kilowatt isn't automatically 4 times faster than 250 kilowatt in real-world charging time.
Correct. Because of that curve and the slowdown, it ends up being just a little bit faster overall, especially if you're charging to a high percentage. The gains diminish at the very top end of power.
And then there's the question of where you find these ultra-powerful chargers.
Right.
BYD has big plans for China, thousands of them, but elsewhere.
Much less clear. So yeah, exciting claim, but practical rollout depends on the car's tech, the battery handling, the cooling, the cost, and crucially, widespread charger availability.
Still, the sources seem to agree this isn't just vaporware from BYD, given their track record, that fish pond R&D.
Right. The feeling is they will likely deliver it. The question is when, how widely, and maybe at what price point initially. It might be a premium feature for a while.
Okay, so that covers the sort of expert analysis and the tech side.
Yeah.
Now, let's really spend some good time, like we planned, digging into those comments, because this is where you hear from people on the ground, right? Customers, observers from all over.
Absolutely, and it's really revealing. One theme that just jumps out again and again, echoing the analysis, is how people see BYD's core identity.
What do you mean?
Like, this one comment put it super clearly. BYD is not a car company that makes batteries. It's a battery company that makes EVs.
Ah, that's spot on. It nails their foundation in battery tech.
And you really get a sense of their global footprint from these comments. People mentioning seeing BYDs everywhere now.
Yeah, I saw that. Comments from Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, Denmark, Brazil, Singapore, the UK, all saying, yeah, these are becoming common.
People sharing their own experiences, too. Like the person in Australia with the 803 owned it nearly 2 years.
Calling it the best car I have ever owned. That's strong praise.
And they mentioned doing modifications, like a custom stereo, which meant taking parts of the car apart, and they were still impressed with the build quality underneath it all.
That says a lot. Others mentioned liking the Shark Truck, the Seal sedan. Someone in Portugal took a BYD Uber and was impressed.
And that anecdote from the London EV conference, the BYD stand supposedly mobbed while Tesla one was quiet.
Yeah, obviously just one data point, but it paints a picture, doesn't it? Shifting buzz, maybe.
And then you get into these specific comparisons people are making, often BYD versus Tesla, based on their own research or ownership.
Like the battery charging thing again. That came up in the comments quite a bit.
Big time. One person claimed, and this challenges some of that expert skepticism we talked about, that BYD's LFP blade batteries let you charge 0 to 100% all the time without hurting the battery much.
Which is totally different from the usual advice for Teslas, right? Keep it between 20 and 80% for longevity.
Exactly. This commenter basically said Tesla's using outdated chemistry compared to BYD's LFP, which they claim is more robust, if that's true for owners.
That's a huge convenience, not having to micromanage your charging state.
Totally. And the same person also mentioned their BYD uses no energy when off, unlike the vampire drain some Tesla owners report. Small things maybe, but they add up in daily life.
And they even mentioned better rear visibility in their BYD compared to a Model Y they'd rented. So, practical stuff.
And then, of course, price. That came up over and over.
Can't ignore that.
That same commenter mentioned getting their BYD new for $15,000 versus a new Tesla at $40,000. I mean, that's a massive difference for you as a buyer.
Wow. And someone else pointed out there are BYD models in China, like a hybrid,
Yeah.
selling for just $10,000.
Just incredible pricing power, which leads directly into all the comments about tariffs, particularly the U.S. ones.
Yeah, people definitely had strong feelings about those. The sense I got was that many commenters see them as purely protectionist.
Oh, absolutely. You see quotes like, if this was available in U.S., it would crush every other auto market. Or, the U.S. will never get to buy one because they know they can't compete. Just raw opinions there.
A feeling that, as one person put it, America can't accept it when someone is doing better.
And several people brought up that comparison to Japanese cars in the 80s. Remember how they were initially dismissed?
Yeah, called junks, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And then they took over based on reliability. These commenters are saying China, or BYD specifically, is maybe even a bigger leap forward than that. A level or two above, one said.
So the tariffs get framed as, politicians freaked out when something affordable and good showed up. Someone even asked point blank if the U.S. is really a free market with these kinds of barriers.
It's clear that's a dominant view among those commenters, reflecting frustration. But there was also that interesting point about BYD already making electric buses in the U.S.
Right? Good catch. Someone suggested that means consumer cars might just be a matter of time, regardless of tariffs. They already have a manufacturing foothold, even if it's different vehicles for now.
Meanwhile, folks in Europe seem to acknowledge the quality of Chinese cars, but also worried about their own local industries, like in Germany.
A different perspective there, yeah.
Yeah.
And circling back to that fast charging claim, some commenters were way more confident than the analysts. They trust BYD to deliver.
They contrasted it with, well, other companies sometimes overpromising.
Yeah, sometimes implicitly pointing at Tesla. One comment said BYD's claims felt like not vaporware and that they will deliver, it's just a matter of time, given their history in R&D.
Someone used the analogy of mobile phone charging speeds, how 10-minute charging seemed impossible years ago but is now real.
It's a fair point. Tech timelines can surprise you. Another really smart comment highlighted how charging needs differ.
Oh, the China versus U.S. thing.
Exactly. Pointing out that in China, with lots of apartment living, super fast public charging is the priority. Whereas in the U.S., maybe more level 2 charging in apartment buildings is just as crucial, alongside the highway fast chargers for trips.
Yeah, that makes sense. The market context really shapes what kind of innovation gets pushed fastest and what matters most to you day to day.
So putting it all together, the scale, the innovation from that fish pond, the cost breakthroughs, the global push, plus all these real-world comments. It's undeniable. BYD and other Chinese makers are seriously shaking things up.
The sources talk about how brutal the competition is inside China, right? Like a price war.
Incredibly brutal. And that internal pressure is a big reason they're looking so aggressively at export markets, which naturally leads to reactions like tariffs elsewhere.
But even with tariffs, the message seems to be that global automakers are paying very close attention. Like that story of Ford's CEO driving a competitor's car, a Xiaomi SU7.
Right, they're scrambling to understand and respond. And it underlines that shift. China's not just the world's factory anymore, it's a source of serious innovation. Those 25,000 patents, 100,000 engineers at BYD, that's real.
There's talk of a ferocious culture of one-upmanship there. New tech rolling out incredibly fast.
Yeah, shocking the rest of the industry sometimes. The analysis kind of concludes that what we're seeing now, like the fast charging stuff, it's just foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing what's next. With BYD maybe aiming for 10 million EVs and hybrids globally, that's huge ambition. Some sources said it feels scary in a way.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, definitely.
Yeah.
You've got BYD's incredible momentum scale, innovation, cost. You've got this potentially game-changing charging tech, even with the practical hurdles. And then this whole messy global picture of competition, user reactions, tariffs.
It really feels like the whole auto industry is in fast forward right now.
Which leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? Looking ahead, 5, maybe 10 years, what does this all mean?
Given this incredible pace of innovation coming from places like China, with companies like BYD.
And these contrasting national strategies, massive internal R&D pushes versus using tariffs as a shield.
What will the global auto industry look like?
Yeah.
Will that raw innovation just overwhelm protectionist policies?
Hmm.
Or will market access, who gets to sell where, end up being the deciding factor in who leads this EV transition?
It's a complex equation, and honestly, it's going to be fascinating and probably a bit turbulent to watch unfold.